Hi, my name is Rhonda from Mbaka Design, and today I'm going to show you how you can work into the starting chain. And when I'm doing this, I'm going to pretend you already know how to do the single crochet stitch. If you don't, please don't worry, because I'm going to do a complete different video just to show you the different stitches that you can make when you're crocheting. So for today's video, I am just going to show you the different parts of your starting chain and how you can work into them. So right here, I've chained a starting chain for you. And you can see I've used a thicker yarn. It's a fabric yarn. It's mostly cotton, and it can show the stitches a little bit more clearly for you, since you need to see the actual loops of the stitch. So we have the chain stitches going across here, and on every chain stitch you have a back loop and a front loop that make the top of the chain stitch. Okay, so you have your back loop and your front loop. And the reason they call them that is anytime they refer to a front loop in crochet, it's the loop closest to you. So even for single crochet, double crochet, whatever you're doing, the loop closest to you will always be the front loop. So in directions, when you're crocheting, if they say you work under the back loop only, it'll be the one that's further away from you on the top of the stitch. So for the chain stitch, you have your front loop and your back loop, and on the back, you have what is called the back bump, this little loop here. Okay, now there's different ways you can work into your starting chain. The one that I learned when I was first learning to crochet was to work under this back loop only. So every stitch I did would be under this loop. Okay. Another way that a lot of people are trying to do now, and which is my favorite, is working under the back bump. This one back here. And all you do is work your stitches under this bump only. The first one's the hardest. After that, it becomes easier because the chain's facing the right direction for the rest of the stitches. You can also work under, which I've done before as well, and I like, this back loop and the back bump. And you just simply slip your hook under both, and then you'll have both of those on top of your hook when you're working your stitches. Okay? A trickier way, but one that I've also tried, and it does give a very nice result, and it's very good for stitches. For example, if you're doing shell stitches and you have to put 5 double crochets in one of your chain stitches, it's best to go under 2 loops so that you don't stretch that stitch out like crazy and make a big gaping hole in your project. So I would either go under those two, the back loop and the back bump, or, which is trickier, it takes more time for me, is go under your front loop and your back loop, just like you were working under a regular stitch. So when you normally crochet a single crochet, you'd go under both of those loops on the top of your stitch. The same thing with the chain stitch. You'd go under both, and then you'd work your stitch. And it produces a really nice, thick beginning chain. And it's really good for projects where you have multiple stitches that need to be worked into each of the chain stitches. Okay, so there's those different ways that you can work into the starting chain. I'm going to show you an example of what they look like after they're done. Here are the examples I prepared for you. And here is our starting chain that we were working on before. So as I was saying before, you have your front loop, your back loop, and the back bump on your chain row, okay, that you can work into. You can work into the first example here is showing you when you work under the front loop and the back loop together, which is the trickiest one to do, I find. And that's when you work under these 2 loops of the stitch. This one here shows you when you work under the back loop only. So you're only working under this top loop here, the back loop of the chain, all the way across for this example. For the next example, I worked into the back loop and the back bump. So this loop and this one at the same time. So you just slide your hook right there under the 2. And this is a nice stitch to use. And I use that in this example right here. And this one is my favorite, and I'll show you why. This one here, I've only worked into the back bump. So I worked into this bump all the way across. It's tricky at first, but as you get to the end, it becomes very easy. It produces a beautiful V on the bottom as well as the top of your stitch. So you'll have your regular stitch. I use single crochets in this example, and you can see the V's at the top of the stitch. And at the bottom, when you work in the back bump, it pushes that back loop closer to the front loop at the bottom of the stitch. So now you have that V on the other end too. So it's really nice for things like dishcloths, because then you're not going to have to put an edging on it unless you want to, because you already have the exact look on the top and the bottom. They match. Okay, so those are 4 different ways you can work into your starting chain. I'm going to take a picture of that and put it on the website, and I'll label them for you so that you can keep it if you want, so you can see the different examples and how the bottoms look, because you can see how each one has a slightly different bottom to your chain row. And that's based on which loops were left over and pushed to the front of the stitch. Okay? So I hope that was helpful, and in the next video I will show you how to work your single crochet stitches. So I'll talk to you later.